My wife and I got married last summer. Her family lives across the country from us, so up until this point I had never actually visited them. But I had met them a handful of times and we've always gotten along fine. They invited us to come visit and stay with them for a few days and we took them up on the offer. We flew in yesterday, and everything went well. Her dad and I watched football while she caught up with her mom and sisters, and then we had a really nice dinner. But things went south at the end of the night when it was made clear that they didn't want me sharing a bed with my wife while in their home, and that they expected me to sleep on the couch. I honestly thought they were joking at first, but they insisted we sleep separately. I had a problem with the implication that I shouldn't be allowed to sleep next to my wife, and I also have a bad back and the couch did not look the least bit comfortable. They don't have a guest room. After arguing back and forth for a bit, I decided to leave and book a hotel. I told my wife she didn't have to come with me. She chose to stay and I said I'd come back the next day. I went off to a Marriott about 10 miles away and got a good night's sleep, trying to not let the whole situation bother me. This morning, I called my wife asking when I should come by. She told me her parents want me to apologize for leaving the way I did. I told her that I'm willing to apologize to keep the peace, but they need to acknowledge that it wasn't appropriate to insist I can't share a bed with my own wife. She said she'd talk to them and call me back. About 10 minutes later, I hear back from her, and she tells me that not only will they not apologize for it, they are now insisting I need to come back and stay on the couch for the rest of our visit. And if I don't agree to this, I'm not welcome back in the house. I'm pretty livid at this point. I told her that there's absolutely no chance that I will do that, and I am no longer willing to offer any sort of apology. My wife's sisters are now bothering me, saying this is just the way their parents are, that my wife is very upset, and that I need to just give in and stay on the couch for the rest of the trip before this turns into some sort of family feud. From my perspective, I don't care what they think and I'm willing to treat the rest of this trip as a solo vacation, go sightseeing and meet my wife back at the airport at the end of the week. Am I an idiot? Update. I took the advice of one of the posters here to ask my wife and her sisters to meet me for dinner apart from their parents. It was interesting to say the least. After we sat down, I leaned into them a bit about what had happened. I asked my wife if she knew her dad was going to demand we sleep separately, and she said she was surprised by it as well. She'd expect that if I were still just her boyfriend. But we're married now. I then asked them all if they thought it was okay for their parents to act the way they did. They said it wasn't, but they know their father and it's best to just let things like this go. This led to a somewhat uncomfortable conversation about how controlling he can get, how he angers easily when he doesn't get his way, and that he was already throwing a fit over me disrespecting him by leaving. The reason they were all trying to get me to come back and apologize was because he would find some way to make them all miserable for the rest of the week if I didn't. I told my wife I was really disappointed that she wouldn't side with her husband when I was clearly in the right, and she went sort of quiet. I then asked if they thought this was even about house rules, because it seemed more like their dad was just trying to show me who was in charge. They agreed. Up to this point I had really done everything I could to not escalate this situation. But I started to get really mad that they were also afraid of how their dad would react. I decided I needed to push back a bit. I know my wife was mainly here to spend time with her sisters who she rarely gets to see. So I told them all I was going to move to a hotel by the beach about an hour away in San Diego for the rest of the week and I'd book a second room for them if they wanted to all join. They don't get to go on trips much, so I figured they'd be excited to get a free vacation away from their parents. They know that their dad is probably going to freak out when they leave, but I think they realized this situation had gone too far, so they decided they would come and deal with the fallout afterwards. So that's where this all stands for now. I'm about to check out of my hotel and hit the road for San Diego. My wife and her sisters are coming down in a separate car after their parents leave for work. I fully expect their dad to throw a conniption fit when he finds out they left without telling him, but I really don't care at this point. I tried to be the bigger person at every turn, but he pushed this all way too far. Not an idiot. Your in-laws are abhorrent hosts. It's their house, their rules, and their rules are stupid. Rather than fighting a pointless battle, you set a clear and valid boundary, and they chose to take offense to it. They want you to stay on their couch because it's a power play. You staying in a hotel takes that power away, and they can't handle it. The fact that your wife doesn't have your back on this is a giant red flag. Good luck. Not an idiot. Tell your wife you're going to book your ticket home for today. Ask her if she wants you to change her ticket to go home with you or if she wants you to cancel it because she'd rather live with her parents forever. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the wife. Now for the next story. Am I an idiot for telling my girlfriend that she needs to learn when to shut the frick up? I, 24, male, and have been dating my girlfriend, 23, female, for about 5 months. Every other month, my grandmother hosts a large family dinner with all my close relatives. She encouraged me to invite my girlfriend over for dinner yesterday. For some context, my entire family and I are black, and my girlfriend is from a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant family. I was at dinner yesterday, and I went to hang out with my niece, 7, female, who I'm very fond of, and the rest of the kids to play Monopoly. My girlfriend tagged along. My niece was counting the play money to pass out to everyone, and one of the other kids said something about how he wanted to be rich and get all the $500 bills. My niece, out of nowhere, blurted out that she couldn't be rich because she's an N-word. I was totally taken aback and asked her who told her that. Apparently, some bully at school said that to her on career day when they were sharing dream jobs, and she said she wanted to be a rich president. I told her that that wasn't true at all and hugged her, and she started crying. Then, my girlfriend jumped in and told my niece that it's really important to forgive the boy who said that because he probably wasn't trying to be mean and was just confused. I was totally shocked and told her she needs to stop trying to justify what happened. She then tried to hush me and started baby talking my niece and said that she should also try to be nicer to all the kids at school because kindness goes both ways. I was totally livid at this point and pulled my girlfriend aside and quietly but angrily told her she needs to learn when to shut the frick up. She started getting riled up at me and started rambling about how statistics are on her side. What the hell she meant? I wasn't really processing what she was saying, but I told her to get out of my grandma's home and just leave already. She drove me here in her car, and I was planning to hitch a ride home with my brother. This morning, I got multiple calls from my girlfriend's sisters calling me an abusive and shitty prick. I know my words were harsh, but I thought my girlfriend was talking in a disgusting manner to my niece. Am I an idiot? Not an idiot. The fact that she immediately jumped to excusing racism is very troubling. I get that they're kids and just parroting what their adults say, but that doesn't mean they should be coddled, and it definitely doesn't mean that your niece owes kindness to unkind people. Not an idiot. What the actual frick, my dude? Sounds like someone is feeling some kind of racist way and feels called out and it's not your niece. This is a conversation you need to sit down and have with her over how she doesn't get to just whitewash, literally, racism in your black household with children being called slurs by other children. Ignorant or not. That situation was highly inappropriate on her end, and I say that as a walking jar of mayonnaise. Now for the next story. Am I an idiot for dropping out as my brother's best man a couple days before his wedding? My 36 brother, 30, got married this past weekend. I was supposed to be his best man. The wedding was 12 plus because they didn't want to have to deal with toddlers and such, which is fair enough. A lot of guests do have young kids though, so they decided to have a venue nearby with a professional sitter if parents wanted to drop kids off there. My wife has some injuries that make her slow to respond, understand what others are saying, and she needs help sometimes with her food. I'll cut it up into small pieces. This doesn't mean she's nothing and she's a smart, capable woman. They had the rehearsal dinner. At the end, my sister-in-law pulled me aside saying she had to discuss something with me. She said they told us about the additional venue they'll be having for their wedding. I said yes, then she asked if my wife had any particular food preferences, and they would order extra food for her there. I was extremely confused and told her we already gave our meal choices, but she said my wife would be better suited at the second venue. I remember just sort of staring at her for a bit and asking if she was serious, that she expected my wife to be with the babysitter. My sister-in-law said it's not like that and they're just looking out for my wife, and I don't have to feed her or anything and can have fun at the wedding. My brother came over and I told him I've literally never heard such a shot, that they think my wife is a child left with a sitter. Brother said it's for the best and if I want I can always go over and check on her. I told him if this is the way they're treating my wife, I have no desire to be part of their shit show and dropped out as best man. Well, all hell broke loose and some people agreed I was right. But my parents texted, called, everything saying they don't agree with this either but it's their choice, and to get over my ego and come. I didn't end up going. I did hear they got one of the groomsmen to give a speech and overall it was fine. But my brother sent me a text saying he expected better from me. I replied back saying I expected better from him. My sister-in-law sent a long-ass text that I ruined their big day on purpose and made them look bad. Not an idiot. What kind of garbage is that? Oh, can your wife just go sit at the equivalent of the kids' table? We don't think she's capable of being a functional adult. I'd have left and not looked back. Anyone pushing you that you did anything wrong should think what they would do in the same situation. And if they say they wouldn't support their spouse, that says a lot about them. Not an idiot. The audacity of them to discriminate against your wife because of her condition is astounding and disturbing. I don't care if it was their wedding. They had no right to treat your wife like that and you did the right thing by calling them out on their behavior and not attending the wedding. Now for the last story. Am I an idiot for telling my brother-in-law to get over himself and to quit holding a 10-year-old grudge? My brother-in-law, married to my sister, is a general contractor. About 10 years ago, my dad and brother were building a deck at my parents' home. They asked my brother-in-law if they could borrow his skid loader but he said no. They prepared the ground as best they could without the skid loader but got to the point they couldn't go on without it. They went to my sis's house to ask again but found out my brother-in-law went out of town. They talked my sis into letting them borrow it, so she took them down to his construction lot and they hooked it up to Dad's truck. This next part I'm not sure of since I don't know much about towing, but from what I was told, Dad's truck wasn't big enough or powerful enough to tow the skid loader on the dump trailer, so he lost control and wrecked. The truck, trailer, and skid loader were totaled. The insurance was barely enough to cover the medical costs and the truck. There was none left over to cover my brother-in-law's stuff. When he got back to town, he exploded. He threatened to sue and things just went downhill from there. My parents are not rich and he wouldn't have gotten anything, so in the end, sis talked him into letting it go. However, from that day on he wouldn't have anything to do with our family. He doesn't come for birthdays, holidays, or anything at all. Next month is our parents' 50th anniversary and we're planning a big family gathering to celebrate. We're also chipping in to send our parents on a cruise to Mexico because they've never been out of the country. I spoke to sis about it the other day and she said she's coming with the kids, but my brother-in-law is not coming. I was fine with that, but when we were discussing their portion of the cruise money, I heard him yelling in the background to deduct their portion from the cost of the skid loader and dump trailer. That pissed me off. After my call with my sis, I called my brother-in-law and told him to get over himself. I told dad and bro made a mistake, but that was 10 years ago and he needs to let it go. He said he'll let it go when they give him the money he lost. I told him he's an ass for holding on to a grudge and putting money in the way of a family relationship. Sis called me a few minutes ago and said they're not coming and that I was out of line. We argued for a bit and that's where it stands. I don't think I'm wrong for telling him to let go of the past, but they're not coming to the anniversary party, so now I'm not sure. Answers to your questions, let's get something straight. My dad and brother are not bad people. They are good people who made a mistake. They couldn't pay back my brother-in-law because he wanted almost $70,000, and again, we're not rich. Dad had to buy another truck because he needed it to go to work. On the other hand, my brother-in-law had 3 other sets of skid loaders and dump trailers on his lot that day so he could take the financial hit while my parents would be homeless. Brother-in-law and sis are way better off than the rest of us, so while I understand your reasoning of paying brother-in-law back, he doesn't need it. The cruise to Mexico isn't some millionaire trip. The total cost is about $3,000 and it'll take over 20 people to pay for that. Again, we're not rich. We can barely cover $3,000 spread out over 20 people, so there's no way we can pay $70,000. You're an idiot. Your family stole $50K plus in work equipment from your brother-in-law. They didn't pay him back. By the sounds of it, showed zero remorse, and he should just get over it. You and your family sound massively entitled. Your brother-in-law is smart to cut a lot of you clean off. You're an idiot. They didn't make a mistake. They stole his shot on purpose when he was gone and broke it. It's easy for the guilty party to forget the past, especially when they never did anything to make amends. What have they ever done to try and make it up to their brother-in-law in the 10 years since they stole and broke his stuff? Am I the idiot for pouring my husband's sweet tea down the drain and marching out? I lost my part-time job due to COVID and I've basically become a little housewife. I'm fine with that, as that's always been my role in my relationship anyways. It's just less hard to keep up with now. I'm also in nursing school for nursing, but obviously I'm doing that from home. My husband works full-time and works hard. His commute to work is very long, over an hour each way. We go running together every day, and because I know it's a lot of stress for him, we meet 20 minutes away from our home so he doesn't have to come home and drive back out. He calls me when he's 20 minutes away, and I leave. Today, I was 7 minutes late as I had to turn off all the lights and get myself together before leaving the house. When I got there, he copped a major attitude with me for being late, refused to even speak to me, for being 7 minutes late. I tried to explain that I had to put my shoes on and turn out the lights, but he wouldn't talk to me. The run was very awkward, and when we got home, he said that he felt he had every right to be angry, and stomped off upstairs. I've had a lot of pent-up feelings about the fact that he has always expected me to be at his beck and call. It's like he thinks the whole world revolves around his time schedule because I lost my job. Anytime he's hungry, thirsty, he yells my name. He doesn't even serve his own plates anymore. It's like he thinks I just sit in the dark with my hands folded, waiting for him to call. At this point, I knew he was being ridiculous, and I was just so upset that I did something that may make me an idiot. When he came downstairs, I told him that he could make his own dinner, his own lunch tomorrow for work, and I looked him straight in the eye as I poured the pitcher of sweet tea I make him every week down the drain, and I said, "You can make your own freaking sweet tea too, you ungrateful brat." And I walked out and drove to my mom's house. So, am I an idiot for that overreaction? I was just so annoyed. Update. I deleted my edits because I wanted to do an update, as I see a lot of kind, wonderful people so concerned about my well-being. I want to thank each and every one of you for being so supportive. I don't have any friends anymore, and all the messages and comments have made me feel like I have a support group. For now, I am staying with my parents indefinitely. My mom is helping me write a list of all the reasons I'd want to stay, and all the reasons I'd like to leave. I have always been a very independent person, and I think I've been lying to myself about my situation for a long time. I called him to tell him I wouldn't be coming home, and he didn't really seem to care much, which did hurt a lot. Either way, I am going to get through this and I'm going to get my degree. For those of you concerned about kids, don't worry, I have an IUD. Again, thank you all so much. Your love and support means more to me than I can express. So, it's been a few days since my original post. Everyone was so kind, helpful, and supportive. I received so many messages, and I want to thank each one of you for them. They meant more to me than you know. Well, I've left my husband, and it really wasn't over this one incident, but really a build-up of many. Before I even made the post, I wasn't completely blind to what he had been doing in terms of control. As weird as it seems, sometimes I just forget I am an adult and I don't have to just say yes sir and listen to any man that's older than me. I'm an adult now. I make my own rules. I feel sick saying this, but I realize I have been viewing him as a parental figure and not a partner. It kind of makes my stomach twist to even type that. but that is what it is. I don't really want to analyze it right now, it's too gross. I'm honestly going through a really tough grieving time right now. I feel like such a failure. What's worse is that he does not care in the least. When I called him to tell him I was leaving, he said okay. Let me know when you want to grab your stuff, we can have you move out ASAP, and that was it. That was all he said before he hung up the phone. I'm really hurting. I loved him so much, and I think part of me just wanted to see if he was willing to fight for me and apologize. He was not, so that's that. But, although I'm hurting, I feel free. My mom has welcomed me back. She's so happy I am divorcing him. I got together with my friends who he wouldn't let me see. I watched TV shows he told me were too childish. And I've been wearing ugly sweatpants and oversized shirts that he always said made me look like a man. So thank you, all of you. I got a wake-up call I desperately needed. I don't even want to be a housewife. I never wanted that for me. No hate on anyone who does. Honestly guys, it was hard and lonely work. I am going to get my RN, and then move on to my master's. You've all encouraged me in the best way possible. Not an idiot. Good for you. Please get legal advice now before you move your stuff. Return the key, especially if the house is marital property. Not a lawyer, not sure if it matters, but I would want to check with a lawyer first for that very reason. Don't let him get out of this marriage with more than his share just because it's easier now. You may regret it later, and you deserve to start this new phase of your life with your head held high. Would you have left this awful husband? Let me know in the comments below. Now, you won't want to miss the next story. Would I be an idiot if I stopped baking cookies for the retreats that have come to expect them? I work for a quilt shop part-time, and once a month we have quilting retreats. Over time I've started to work more at the retreats, and it's come to the point where I cook for the retreats and the owners reimburse me for ingredients, with the exception of the batch of chocolate chip cookies that I usually make for free. Not to brag, but I make some damn good chocolate chip cookies. The recipe is secret and it took me years to get the way I want it. The cookies have become a staple of the retreats, and the owners have started telling people about the cookies to convince them to buy a retreat spot. I don't get paid for baking these cookies, and I don't even get reimbursed for the ingredients to make them. I started doing it just because I like baking them and giving them to people. It was fun at first, but now when I walk into the shop on retreat times I get bombarded with "Oh, did you bring cookies? Where are the cookies?" I can't tell you the last time I got a "Hi, how are you?" from any of the retreaters or the other staff that work solely on the retreats. Half of the people who come to the retreats don't even know my name. They call me Cookie Lady, despite being reminded of my name several times. This month I've got a friend in town and told the owners I couldn't cook for this month's retreat. When one of the other retreat staffers heard this, they said, "We will miss your cookies. Not we will miss you or even have a good time with your friend." I feel like at this point my entire worth to them is placed in the damn cookies, and I don't even want to bake them for them anymore. I love baking, but part of that love is experimenting with other stuff, and the one time I brought brownies instead of my cookies I got bitched at. I feel forced into making them, and it's not fun anymore. I don't even get paid to make them, but suddenly it's expected of me, and it gets me nothing but stress and hurt feelings. So, would I be an idiot if I stopped baking them and just told people to deal with it? It's been more than a year since my original post. As a number of the comments suggested, I ended up talking to the owner of the shop and telling her that I wasn't going to bake cookies for the retreats anymore. I told her I felt belittled and disrespected by her behavior and that of the retreaters. Her response was basically, "They expect the cookies. What do you expect me to tell them? They're not going to want to come to retreats anymore. You should have never baked them, and all this whole issue is going to be bad for business." I went home feeling completely invalidated. She completely gaslit me. I read and reread some of your commands multiple times and decided to stand my ground on this. She didn't threaten to fire me or anything. Not that she could if she needed me, but she continued to guilt trip me and try to manipulate me into baking again. She even had some of the retreaters come to me offering me money to bake for the retreats. At this point it wasn't about the pay, it was how people were treating me. I refused and started applying to other jobs because I was sick of the environment. The thing is, I'm actually a licensed pharmacist. I was working for minimum wage at a quilt shop because I was burnt out in an oversaturated and overworked field. I was depressed because I was a doctor of pharmacy, 8 years of college completed, and I didn't feel mentally fit to work in that field because of my mental health. I worked for this quilt shop for a year. I learned some things, got a break, and regained some of the mental health I lost. This cookie debacle was the push I needed to regain my self-worth and go back to the field that I wanted to be in. Within a month I found a job as a pharmacist at a federal prison. I loved it from the first day. I've been there a year now and I love every day of it. My job has meaning, my coworkers are awesome, and every day is a new experience. It took a few months, but I got my baking mojo back. I'm known throughout the prison by my actual name, and people come to visit the pharmacy for some cookies or whatever baked goods I decide upon, and they stay for conversation. I found a job I love and a group of people who appreciate my baking and don't use me as a cookie slave. Thanks, Reddit. You guys are awesome. Not an idiot. Baking for coworkers is such a weird thing. I used to bake a lot when I was single. It was a hobby and I had the time for it. So naturally I brought my goods to work since I didn't want to eat 3 dozen cookies by myself. Everybody loved them and I was happy until one day I overheard some coworkers talking about how it was weird that I baked so much. Weird. Maybe because I was a 27-year-old guy at the time. I was surprised and annoyed. If it's so weird, why are you stuffing your face with my weird cookies? After that I was like, frick this, and completely stopped bringing baked goods to work. Of course those same co-workers asked why, and I told them I just didn't think it was appropriate anymore, and that was that. Anyway, I love the outcome to this story and wish you the best in all of your baking and non-baking endeavors. Now for the next story. Am I the idiot for shutting down black names because I think it'll make life harder on my kids? My husband and I are having a baby. I'm mixed race, half black and half white. My husband is black. We don't know the gender yet, but my husband prefers names that most people would call black names for boys. Names like Trayvon, Devon, Marquis, etc. I grew up with a name that is tied to black culture and hated it for most of my life. I go by a shortened form of my name professionally, I.E.D. for Denatia, because I have seen how people react to my government name. I am sure I have been passed up for jobs because of how people perceive my name. My husband has a name more commonly used for white boys, I.E. Jake. He wants a strong black name for our son because he never had that and believes that giving him a white name to avoid racism isn't helping anyone. I don't disagree, but don't want to use our son as a test dummy to change that. This has become a battle. I know that we both need to agree on a baby name, but am I the idiot for writing off all black names? Update. I posted a month ago about a dilemma my husband and I were having with our baby's name. We had already decided on a girl's name because it honors his mother, but we're stuck on a boy's name. My husband thought it was important for our son to have a name strongly tied to black American culture. I wanted a more neutral name since I am biracial and grew up with a stereotypical black name. We found out we are having a boy and decided on his name. His name will be Miles Trayvon. We thought it was a perfect compromise. My husband's family tends to use middle names a lot, so he'll probably be Trey to most of them. When he's in school, his name will just be listed as Miles, last name. He can officially be Miles T, last name, if he doesn't want to use Trayvon, but he can also easily go by Trayvon if he feels more connected to that name. This option gives him the choice, which my husband and I agreed was important. My husband hated growing up with a stereotypical white boy name and said it caused some ribbing from people in his community who saw him as being less black. He talked about how an 8 Mile Eminem's character says something like, "This guy's a gangster." His real name's Clarence. That's not to say my husband ever wanted to be a gangsta. He's an actuary lol, but he said he felt like his name played a role in further isolating him from his black peers growing up. I had the opposite experience. My mom is white and my dad is black. They decided on a stereotypical black name and I think it made my life harder. I go by a nickname and I do it personally as well. When talking about it with my husband, I realized it started early. I remember being about 4 and being out with my white grandma. A woman came up to me, touched my hair, told my grandma I was beautiful, and then asked what my name was. Instead of saying my real name, my grandma said, "Her name is Daisy." I attended an HBCU and finally felt comfortable with my given name, but noticed a lot of seniors with black names use shortened versions of their names for job applications. For example, Raquan Smith would put Ray Smith, DeMarcus Jones would put Marcus Jones, Keshonda Nelson would put Shauna Nelson, etc. They said you had to play within the system and I did that. Anyway, sorry for the long update. I just wanted to explain why this was such a big deal to both of us. We didn't really get deep into it until after I posted here, so thanks for encouraging that dialogue. Before anyone says it, I do realize some people will connect Trayvon to Trayvon Martin. That's not why we are using it. I posted about this in Namerds and a lot of people were upset by it, but I don't mean to offend anyone. It's a family name on my husband's side. No idiots here. You both have perfectly valid points. Why not give him one as a first and one as a middle name? That way they'll both be his legal names and he can make his own choice when he's old enough to understand. No idiots here. Both have valid points. Maybe suggest a name that has a strong association with proud, powerful and inspirational black figures, but that isn't, for lack of a better term, definitionally black, like maybe Nelson or Martin or Malcolm or Desmond or some such. Am I an idiot for shouting at my ex in front of my daughters? I, male 37, have 3 girls, 8, 10, and 12. Their mother walked out on us for another man when our youngest was around 4. My ex still stays in contact, though, and pays child support. A few weeks ago, while doing laundry, I saw red spots on my oldest's underwear. I asked her if she knew about it, and she cried and told me she tried to call her mom. But my ex didn't call back. She'd been stuffing toilet paper in her underwear, hoping that would work. I explained to her that periods are nothing to be ashamed of, and found some great resources online for us to review together. I took her to the store to pick out brands of feminine products she wanted to use. She picked Playtex Sport because she's a gymnast. After we were done, I decided I should do the same thing with my other 2. My 12-year-old volunteered to be part of preparing them, and we made a whole night of it. It was wonderful, and I learned a lot. I even learned what a menstrual cup is, and how they benefit the environment. The other day, my ex called back. I'll usually arrange a video chat and leave the room so they can have some alone time, and when they're done chatting, I'll come back in to talk about boring co-parenting stuff like school, bills, etc. This last time, my ex was furious with me for talking about periods with the girls. She shouted at me that I was sick and perverted. Why didn't I call her myself if I knew it was so urgent? I could have called one of their grandmas, aunts, but my mom has dementia, while her mom and sisters call me a loser because I teach kindergarten, so I'm not fond of them. My ex told me I was being immature and should have just toughed it out for the girls. This really pissed me off, so I shouted back that maybe if she wasn't such a deadbeat and answered her goddamn phone once in a while, she could have handled this. I brought up everything she does that hurts them. She hasn't been to a single soccer game, piano recital, or gymnastics meet in 2 years. Every other weekend when they come home from her house, they go straight to their rooms, only to emerge hours later asking me why she loves her new husband more than them, and what did they do to make her leave. My ex responded by saying I should tell them it's not their fault I couldn't satisfy her, and I screamed fuck you, and she just smirked and pointed behind me, saying look what you did when I turned around. My 8-yo and 10-yo were standing in the doorway crying. It broke my heart. I never shout, so I know I scared them. My 12-yo stormed in and started screaming at her mom, and while I appreciate her sticking up for me, this is not a battle I want her fighting. My ex hung up before I could fully de-escalate the situation, and let's just say the girls have been given free reign of the ice cream and limitless hours of video games, because I feel so bad. I even watched all the Twilight movies with them, so don't say I don't love them. But in this instance, am I the idiot for shouting? It's been almost a month since my original post, and a lot has happened since then. Many of you asked for an update, so here goes. Last weekend, the girls were at their mom's. After she dropped them off Sunday night, my 12-yo asked to talk to me in private. We went into her room, and she showed me 2 recordings she'd taken on her phone. One of my ex trying to convince them I was abusing them, and one of her and her husband arguing about how much she was paying in child support. And I'll be honest here, my cousin is a family court lawyer and basically raked her over the coals. It wasn't pretty, but I was still extremely hurt over the affair. I even got alimony. Anyway, my 12-yo told me she didn't want to go to her mom's anymore, but she said she felt she had to because she's the oldest sibling and it's her job to protect the younger ones. I've always instilled this value in her. I'm an oldest child myself, but seeing this just made me even more upset, because now it's just another battle she's fighting that she shouldn't be. She's also just started to figure out that her mom cheated, and over the past couple weeks she started firing tons of questions at me about the timeline of their relationship I couldn't really answer. And after showing me the recordings, she literally demanded I answer her, yes or no, did her mom cheat on me? It wasn't easy, but I told her the truth, with the promise she wouldn't tell her sisters. As much it sucks, that's my job, not hers. The way she cried on my shoulder was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced. But she was catching on, and I figured if she's going to find out regardless, it should be in a setting where she's comfortable. After she was done crying, I told her to email me the recordings she took, and called my cousin. We've just started the paperwork, but my cousin is certain we can get my ex nailed for parental alienation, and since she got a promotion a few months ago, I should be able to renegotiate the child support payments as well. Most importantly, the recordings should be enough to give me grounds for supervised visits only, which is what I want. I still want the girls to have a relationship with their mom, especially since the younger two still want to see her. I'm just going to have to make sure I'm present at all times when they're with her. Co-parenting is oodles of fun, kids. Anyway, I also want to give a huge thank you to all the supportive comments and messages. I only saw most of the DMs recently because I use the Reddit as Fun app on my phone, and for some reason it doesn't show chat room messages. I'm not the best with technology, seeing as my most valuable job skill is herding 5-yos, but I wouldn't trade it for any other career. Thanks for all your support, Reddit. Not an idiot. I gave you the perspective I had as a child in a similar situation in your original post, and I will again. I'm also an eldest child and took on that protector role until the anxiety finally broke me down. I used to have panic attacks on the Friday my father would come to pick us up every weekend until I refused to go. Being the protector and shield, punching bag is a heavy burden to bear. If your eldest isn't already in therapy, I think she should be. Check in with her often. I doubt she'd give up the mantle of protecting her younger siblings, but she's gonna need support from you to make sure she isn't hurting herself or getting worn down or blaming herself in the process. I hope supervised visits will be the way going forward for you. Good luck. Did this father take it too far? Let me know in the comments. You won't want to miss this next story. Am I the idiot for raining on my cousin's parade regarding the name she picked out for her baby? My cousin Stephanie and I are really more friends than relatives. An important note is that she's not really online much, so can be out of the loop on certain memes and jokes in internet culture, and TBH, doesn't really understand the concept of viral internet references or how they work. Stephanie is pregnant and just found out it's going to be a girl. About a week ago, she told a gathering of her best girlfriends that she's going to name her daughter Karen. The room instantly went cold, but after an awkward silence, everyone else politely said it was lovely. I couldn't bring myself to respond at all. Later in the evening, when Stephanie was out of the room, everyone was immediately like, OMG, that poor kid, and why would she pick Karen of all names? I was uncomfortable with this conversation, given that everyone had been so positive about the name to her face. I thought more about it over the next couple of days, and just felt really weird about the whole thing. The name is really loaded, to the point it could be detrimental to the baby, and Stephanie had no idea of the connotations to make an informed decision. So a couple of days later, I tentatively brought it up. I told her I was so excited for the baby, and just wanted her to have all available information when picking a name. I then started to explain that Karen has some negative connotations and has become sort of an internet joke to describe a specific kind of entitled middle-aged woman. Stephanie instantly was furious and started talking over me, saying, "Why are you saying this? This is so mean." I was really surprised by her reaction. It felt very out of character, so I immediately stopped and said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I just wanted to tell you something I thought you might not know." She replied, "That's the name I picked for my daughter, and you think I picked it as some kind of joke? I don't understand why you'd say something so hurtful." When she said that, I felt like it signaled that she didn't really understand what I was trying to tell her. So after agonizing for a second about whether to press the issue even though she was so angry, I felt like in for a penny, in for a pound, and since she was already mad, I wanted her to at least understand what I was trying to explain to her. I googled Karen Know Your Meme on my phone and tried to show her the screen of results while saying, "Look, I'm just saying that there's more meaning to the name than you may realize." She stood up, pushed my phone away, and shouted, "Wow." She then stormed out of my home and drove away. My aunt and mom have been berating me all week because Stephanie told them that I made fun of her baby name. Stephanie has not spoken to me or responded to my texts since. I can take a hint, and I'm not going to broach a topic again that caused so much distress, but I keep going back and forth on whether I was taught here by bringing it up in the first place. Edit. Thanks, everyone. I have been properly schooled, and I accept my judgment that I was taught here. Stephanie and I have a history of being extremely open and honest with each other. I was the maid of honor in her wedding, which we planned on being the case from a young age, and we always joked as teenagers that part of my duties would include talking her out of the marriage if the groom she picked sucked. And so maybe I was too flippant with approaching this topic due to our history, and was unempathetic and underestimating how much she was already invested in the name she chose for her future daughter. I admit I'm a bit frustrated that Stephanie still doesn't understand what I was trying to tell her. She still thinks I was making some kind of weird, cruel joke accusing her of picking the name as a joke. But I have messaged her a sincere apology that she accepted, and I will never speak of this again to Stephanie or baby Karen. I'll also stand up for Stephanie if her other friends shoot and talk about the name around me again. If they're not willing to voice their thoughts to Stephanie directly, they need to not say the kinds of things they were saying behind her back. Edit 2. One more thing. I definitely was not trying to tell Stephanie to not name her daughter Karen. I just wanted her to make the decision either way knowing the connotations, since I'd want someone to do the same for me if I picked a baby name with cultural baggage I wasn't aware of. I realize now I handled it poorly and was hurtful to Stephanie in the process, but I just wanted to be clear that I wasn't actively trying to talk her out of the name. I just didn't want her to be blindsided if it came up later. Update. Baby Karen was born healthy and happy back in October. She's an absolute sweetheart of a baby, and I'm totally in love with her. Between March and May, I didn't get to see her at all in person, but I was doing regular FaceTime, house party calls with Stephanie and Karen, and over the last few weeks, I've been going over to Stephanie's house to sit in her backyard and chat with Stephanie, coo at Karen from a lengthy distance. I have two reasons for updating. First, I've realized since Karen's birth that her name has taken on new meaning to me. When I'm with her, Karen just means her, and I don't think about the other connotations. In other words, you guys were right. That said, though, my second reason for updating is that Stephanie got back into her years unused Facebook at the beginning of the pandemic to keep in touch with people. She's been on it pretty regularly lately for the first time in years. Historically, she's not really been into social media. Most people in our area, social circle have been posting really heavily about BLM and the protests happening right now, as well as racial justice issues more generally. As a result, Stephanie has now come into contact with a deluge of Karen memes for the first time, and found them confusing and horrifying, especially the use of Karen as shorthand for a racist. I've basically just declined to talk about it with Stephanie, because it went so poorly last time, but both my mother and her mother have hounded me about it because it's upsetting to Stephanie, and said things like, "Is this what you were talking about before? Why didn't you say so? Why didn't you explain it better? You should have told Stephanie." And Jesus wept. You really can't win. Thanks again for all your feedback on my last post. It was very helpful in giving me some zen about the situation. Edit. Wow, I've been super overwhelmed by the flood of very kind, heartfelt PMs, and just one or two not so kind ones, as well as the comments on my other post. Thank you, everyone. It continually amazes me how many nice and empathetic people frequent a sub devoted to assholes. You're an idiot. You really think it's going to matter when this kid's older. It's a meme. Oh, and for anyone pregnant or planning to have kids, this is why you don't reveal the name until they're born. Someone's always got something stupid to say, no matter what. You're the idiot. I am aware of the Karen meme, but come on, it's a totally normal name. I can't believe so many of you would take a meme so seriously. Now for the next story. Am I the idiot for not making coffee how my fiance wants me to? Female 23, no, but this has been a point of contention for a while. My fiance, male 25, is a foodie and is extremely particular about a few things, one of them being coffee. We use a manual grinder, get distilled water. The water in our area is really hard and according to him affects the taste. But I don't notice anything, and we have an AeroPress and a metal coffee filter to make the coffee. I'm very much not a foodie, unless being a Sour Patch Kids connoisseur is a thing. My fiance weighs his coffee beans to make sure that he's using the exact right amount. Changes the setting on the coffee grinder depending on whether he's using the AeroPress or the metal coffee filter. Measures the water, and if he's using the AeroPress lets the coffee grounds and water brew for a certain amount of time before actually making the coffee. On the other hand, I use a scoop to measure my coffee beans. Use whatever setting the grinder is on. We'll usually just use tap water. Eyeball the water instead of measuring it, and don't let it sit to brew. And you know what? It's fine. It tastes fine. It makes me happy. The end. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Problem is that this really bothers my fiance. We've had multiple arguments about me making my coffee wrong, and it's very normal for him to badger me, weigh my coffee beans or switch the coffee grinder to the optimal setting while I'm making my coffee. If I'm making coffee for him, sure, I'll measure the beans and all of that jazz because I know that he can taste the difference, but I don't think that I should have to jump through all of those hoops for something that doesn't affect him. On the other hand, he seems to be really bothered by this. Today, as I was trying to scoop coffee beans into the grinder, he reached around me to put the scale he uses in front of me and asked me to please weigh my coffee beans. I was really frustrated because we've had this conversation so many times, so I snapped the word no at him, and he walked away and muttered "you, too," saying that even though I hadn't said it, I'd definitely been thinking "fuck you." For the record, I wasn't thinking that. So am I an idiot for not making coffee how my fiance thinks I should and for sometimes snapping at him when he gets pushy about it? Edit. I don't know if this is important, but I drink decaf and he drinks regularly, so I'm never making coffee for both of us. I'm either making coffee for him or I'm making coffee for myself. Edit 2. I sat him down and told him that I needed him to never comment on how I make my coffee and how I was making it. He repeated it back to me in his own words to check that he understood me. A counselor once told me that this is helpful to do in an argument, and then he agreed. Edit 3. Okay, people keep bringing this up. Google an AeroPress because I don't feel like explaining it. Basically, you push on a phallic symbol until you have coffee. Putting hard water through it does not damage it. As much as my fiance drives me crazy, I would never do something to damage his equipment because it's important to him. Now for an update. So it's been about a year since I made this post. Whenever I read posts like mine on here, I'm always wondering, did Opus leave that idiot? So for those of you who care, I left that idiot. A lot of you were on the nose that this wasn't the only way that he was controlling. My ex believes that he's the smartest person in the room, so if you're doing something differently than how he would, then you're doing it wrong and must be corrected. I'm not saying that everyone's responses to my post gave me a revelation and I immediately knew what I had to do, but it was a nail in the coffin. I'm living within an hour of my parents now when before I was on the opposite side of the country. I have a job as a caregiver and I'm planning to go to grad school to be a social worker. I have a boyfriend who doesn't try to control every aspect of my life. When I go grocery shopping, I'm not stressing about accidentally buying the wrong brand of pasta, which was the right brand of pasta when we lived in a different state. I still don't get that. Or juice that's from concentrate. And I've switched to pre-ground coffee because frick you, I want to. None of this would have happened if I'd stayed with him. So yeah, thank you to everyone who played a tiny role in helping me see what an unhealthy relationship I was in. Not an idiot. Congrats. How did X take the breakup? He'd seen it coming and had been casually telling me that I wasn't mentally stable enough to make any major life decisions. And when I broke up with him, he doubled down on it and said that I was doing this because I needed therapy. He maintained